Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second session of the series of our digital literacy curricula series. This one is Introduction to Dart, to the Dart curriculum. My name is Jose Adorno. I'm the digital ATDN coordinator, and I'm accompanied by Mary Kate Haverly, our digital ATDN specialist. We are working through this introducing the curricula in the view of the framework that we use to align these pieces. But right now, we're focusing on each curriculum individually and to focus on that uh, instead of the full picture like we did on our last session. If you're interested on that one, we will have that posted on the website. I'll make sure that there is a playlist that we're putting together. So that way, if you want to see them all, you get access to all of them. If there's something you need to recall and that kind of thing. And with that, we'll get started. We do want to start with a quick what is. Okay, we will get to that. Yep, sorry. Okay, so let's go quickly to what is adult ATDN and digital ATDN. It's the Adult Training and Development Network. These and we are it's services funded by the Connecticut State Department of Education, the academic office, to provide training opportunities and resources for adult education programs across the state. And it's also home to professional and comprehensive in-person and online training for adult education professionals in numerous areas across the state. These are like our websites that you have access to both on the ATDN side and where Mary Kate and I are the digital ATDN um, side of it. For today's agenda, in today's session, we will understand why Dart was developed, see how Dart supports beginner learners, identify where Dart fits in digital literacy pathways, and explore practical classroom applications. Now, Dart covers two things that I identify with deeply. And number one, it's, oh, we'll get back to this slide in a second. Number one is ESL. My background is teaching English as second language, as well as teaching English to Spanish speakers. And one of the things that I've seen through the practice and what I've seen a lot through other education is that learning a language, one of the big factors is how much practice do you get in what they learn in the classroom and how they could apply it outside, being exposed or not exposed, but being able to try to communicate and look for ways to apply what they're learning, and building that practice will help them gain more vocabulary as well as to be able to communicate in their community. In addition to that, I am myself an English language learner. My first language being Spanish. So while most of the time with my hundreds of hours of experience, I could say that I'm pretty fluent, there are instances that when I speak in English, my mind is still wired in Spanish. So I'm thinking in Spanish, trying to say what I'm trying to translate on the go before I say it in English. And there's occasions that I stop and pause because I'm not sure what word to use because I have that gap in occasions. Which, in other words, that digital load, the digital load, the cognitive load of trying to translate on the go, even though you would say that I had enough practice, is still present. The second thing that I very passionate about, and I think that you guys will not guess which one this is digital literacy. If those that know me know that I love technology. I know if there's something new, I want to look at it. I want to figure how it works and how what I could do. Is it something that could improve um my workload or personally, or if there's some way that I could automate someone Some people think I like Excel sheets. I don't know why. Spreadsheets. But this is not something, well, I am very passionate with this. This is not something that everyone shares. This, for many adult learners, this is another thing that they need to learn in order to get to where they want to go. And taking into those two considerations, what if I say that there is a curricula that actually takes both the language skills and the um, the digital literacy skills and put them together in one curricula that targets both skills while still moving students forward. And that will be DART. So before I go forward, I do want to back step a little bit. This is digital definition of digital literacy. We use the American Library Association definition. And with here, we just, I'm just going to read it out just for context. But digital literacy is the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information, requiring both cognitive and technical skills. This is where we underline everything across the framework and curricula that we aligned. So just, I didn't have it on the first presentation, but I included it in the slides so then moving forward, I just want to make sure that that's there for that context of what we're basing off digital literacy. So in order to talk about DART, need to go a step back and look at the origin. And DART stands for Digital Access and Resilience in Texas. It originated through a workforce initiative with Tyson Foods. It was based on an AOK framework that they had, and it was designed to support system access. They wanted people or their employees to be able to log into an account with a username and password and to navigate the system. So if they had made orders or whichever other tasks, they were able to do that. So what the access meant was understanding what was a keyboard, the creating the username and passwords, and safe passwords, and then of course navigating logging screens and the interface. Through that initiative, which was between an adult education agency in Texas and Tyson Foods, they had these pilots. And what the pilots showed was that intentional instruction matters, that the learners demonstrated measurable skill gains, but it wasn't necessarily gains as we know, like doing a CASAS test. It was more through the performance-based milestones that um, the employer had set with the adult education agency. So together they created this curriculum where they were able to make that make those goals. And what they found was success with those. The curriculum authors are Glenda Rose and Denise Gerkert. Um, you'll have access to the slides and you'll have the access to the curriculum, different portions of it. Um, from this here, they were able to have a Creative Commons license, which allowed them to distribute it for adult education agencies in Texas, and it's free for other states to use, which then includes us. If there's any questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat. I will be periodically stopping and looking at chat to at specific times. And I already see one, so I'll be answering that a little later. So connecting classroom reality to the digital literacy pathway. So there's two pieces of information here that we're looking at. We're going to look at the foundational skill gap, which are the different barriers that we experience in the classroom, and what the pathway-based approach would provide when we're applying this into with a plan, or in this case, a curriculum. So what we see in the classrooms, ESL builds language, often without technology, especially for low-level learners. And this is not a bad thing. We're not saying that this is bad. These are like some of the where these gaps occur. Digital literacy assumes prerequisite skills. If we're looking at North Star as an example, in order to access the North Star module, you need to be able to have an account in order to access the module. So that's what it's referring to. Beginner learners are asked to skip the foundation. Sometimes we have programs that we are using in the classroom, and we're trying to get them to log in, but skip like all the foundation piece or the involved to teach those basics. And then all this together creates an unbalanced approach to that is frustrating for learners and also not agency in general, but also like staff. If you're trying to work with multi-level learners and there are different spots, or just onboarding a program without the necessary support, then creates these imbalances. With the pathway-based approach, learners enter with different starting points because the curricula kind of gives you the different entry points for that. The curricula serves at different stages. Again, kind of into that point. Progression is intentional and supported with strategies and other resources. And then DART supports the earliest entry point. When we talk about the earliest entry point in our digital literacy curricula, we have DART as our first, it's the most basic curriculum because it's built for beginner English language learners. We're looking at NRS, ASL levels 1, 2, and 0, 1, 2, and 3. Um, Learners are with limited or no keyboard experience. So it not only targets the language, but it's also targeting the digital skill. Learners familiar with smartphones, excuse me, not computers, taking into consideration that they might not know what a PC is, but they might have a smartphone. And then smartphone is one of the approaches that they use in addition to like a paper-based keyboard on how to teach this. And then learners needing access before independence. So if you're trying to onboard and you're trying to have a program used, I'm going to say Burlington English is one of the programs in order to teach learners to be able to go from the foundation of opening the web page, going onto the website, having a secure login, being able to sign in, that kind of thing. If you're using email, same approach. And these are transferable skills that apply in different contexts. And this would just also provide that support, that foundation for our millions of accounts that we have once you start using technology. DART's core milestones. So there are 7 core milestones in DART. I will have them listed here. I won't read them all, but they are in appendix that it's available, which I will show you in the next slide so you can see how they look like. But it goes from using the keyboard, which is the most foundational one that they go to, all the way through how, creating an account. In this case, they use email, and then going into how to not necessarily privacy and security, but just general some safety things that they need to consider, as well as some recognizing scam and email, which is in phishing, which is one of the big components. Here we'll show you, this is a snapshot for the Appendix A, which is the milestones. For each milestone, as you can see, it's a lot more wordy in here specifically, but they have also technology skills as well as English language skills. So a learner that's able to complete milestone number 1, which is use keyboard to type a series of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols, you could see what technology skills that they build and the English language skills. If you go through the entire curriculum, let's say, then the learners will learn these skills across each one. This is on page 19, so I just linked it here. for your reference. But when we go into the curriculum itself, we could show you. One of the biggest pieces, or the biggest piece in the curriculum, is the lessons themselves. We're looking at 20 lessons, and the breakdown of the lessons is that they follow a 5E lesson structure. I'll show you what that is in the next slide. There's repetition and practice built in. There's different strategies and techniques that they use, and they recommend when you're working with those learners. And there are ESL strategies to teach vocabulary and skills. One of the things that Glinda Rose, which she did a presentation for us when we ran a pilot a couple years ago, was that they wanted to make sure that the lessons had, even if you didn't have the context or the full background of an ESL teacher, that you knew how to target ESL instruction within the context of digital literacy. So they have a breakdown on how you would teach vocabulary and other types of skills and activities there. And I'll show you where you could find that in the curricula as well. Curriculum. This is the 5E model of instruction. Um, I I'm not gonna go in depth with this. I did link as to where you could find more information. I found the Science Resource Center has a breakdown of what each of the components are and how that fits into the the instruction model that they used. But the five of them that you're looking at when you're looking at the lesson, and you will see them labeled as engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. So you'll see each lesson will have your alignment, which we'll see that as well. And then you'll see the breakdown of what is the engage portion of it, what is the explore portion, and that kind of thing. So we're talking about Dart as a curriculum, but Dart is really a supplemental resource. And in our pilot 2 years ago, we selected North Star or agencies that were using North Star that had a digital skill foundation, a program that they would use, and they were to implement Dart. And one of the things that they found, or what that we found, was that they were using Dart as a supplement, which then aligns to the purpose of the curricula. All those areas where they were gaps or students needed additional practice, or let's say the language level was a little too high because North Star requires a 211 reading score. They were able to go in and use Dart, looking for those lessons that aligned with North Star in order to support or develop that skill with more structure before they would go into North Star and continue their lesson. North Star, there is a bridge between Dart and North Star that's there naturally. Naturally, it's like they thought about it. That's like around lesson 10. Once they go into like more of the basic computer skills, they align into to the North Star module there, as well as the internet basics and using email. So again, you get that extra support to scaffold further to lower the language level for better comprehension, and then you could go back into North Star and do it that way. Some agencies did the the assessment first, and then from there they went down to Dart and then supported that way, then went back to North Star. Or if there was a specific lesson that they couldn't get it, then they would use Dart as well. To put this into context as well, one of the questions that I get asked is, you know, if you're teaching separate digital literacy, let's say, or you're working together. A few years ago, well, actually more than a few years ago. I was working with a teacher. I was working the computer lab, and the teacher was working in the classroom. It was very low beginner. She was excellent at very beginner skills and building that vocabulary and vowels and the letters and all of that. But they had to do some tech, and in those instances, they will have to go into the lab, and I had to provide that tech piece. So what we did was that we worked using our strengths. I would know what she was working in the classroom and try to align whatever tech skill that they needed to work on to bridge off of where they were working in the classroom. She would also get an idea of what I was doing in the lab, and then that gave her the opportunity to support or kind of scaffold a little bit what they were going into, so they had the expectation, and we just had that communication. That helped the learners really not feel lost when they were going to the next to the computer lab, because when they were working in the computer lab, it didn't feel like the next class. It was just like the next component of it. And what also helped as well, there was two groups. So she took half, I took half, and then they were split as to like the more beginner ones and then the more advanced. They were still beginner, but there was you could they were a little bit easier to group because then they had more autonomy in the process. It's not a completely fail-safe process. You're always going to run into into issues. So one of the things that I would do, what didn't work well, what took longer than I expected, um, that it would go, and I would just make different tables or instructions onto what would help them the next time. And I just kept refining them until it kind of streamlined. And once they go into that practice, again, going back into practice, everything flowed a little bit better. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that because it was a question last time as well. DART includes estimated instructional hours to complete the DART curriculum. And this table, I know that people see this and they're like, whoa, this is many hours. But I like to show this separately because I like to give the background of it, right? If you're looking for advanced EL English language learners, which are your NRS 5 and 6, you have 20 to 30 hours. If you're teaching the entire curriculum, it's 20 lessons. So you're looking at about an hour each lesson, which is what they estimate for the instruction. You have your intermediate, so some lessons will need to be repeated. You have 25 and 35. Again, that repetition comes back, if for keyboard practice and so on and so forth. As you see that the numbers, as it goes to beginners and a little description, you see that this number increases. Now, this is a supplemental curriculum. While you can teach separate, um, to not isolate, but kind of introduce some of the concepts that you're trying to build. What your students are using in the classroom, if you have if you're using Burlington English, if you're using New Zealand, if you're using USA Learns, if you're using North Star, all of these are moments and opportunities for your learners to practice that digital skill. So together, if you're looking into that, you do cover more than the 20 hours, let's say, if you would do that curriculum. So I do want to mention that because sometimes we'll look at it and we just think it's just in isolation, just for that. These lesson plans can be customized because they do have it in Word to align to whatever tools that you're using as well. So then they're getting that hands-on practice with something that's relevant that they are using in the classroom. I do have a question in the chat, which I will answer a little later once we get to it. But if you have additional questions, put them in the chat. I am more than happy to answer as they go. we're going to jump in and look at the curricula itself. And in the meantime, when we get to that, I'm going to share the link in the chat. And you have two options here. I am going to model and show you like different pieces that we're talking about, so that way you could see this in context. But also, if you're comfortable, you could also explore and think about the following, or you could follow me and think about the following. We're going to be exploring the lessons and milestones, but at the same, identify where your learners get stuck in your classroom with the technology that you're using. Um, Determine where can Dart fill the gap. Looking into these, which one of these lessons or the from the appendices that we're looking at, what can support you to build that to fill that gap. And then you could ask questions and you could share your experiences for Dart if you have used it before, which I should have started with that and I didn't. If you could put in the chat if you have explored, have used Dart before or know what Dart is. I've just started to look at Dart. I have heard of others using it. Okay, perfect. Okay, I shared the link here. Excited to see how I can use this with the high beginner class. Okay, awesome. Keep sharing in the chat. I'll keep going, but I'll be interested to see what you guys I'm trying to get it to work in our classroom. Okay. And I didn't mention it at the beginning. I usually mention it at the end. But we do have tech implementation and support. So this is really just giving you a bird's eye view of what it is, looking at some factors, generally speaking. But if there are specific factors that apply to you and to your current setup at your agency, you can schedule a tech implementation and support, and we just help you. We listen to you. What are the questions that you have? What are some potential barriers, and we could work around it together. So we're here as a thinking partner as well. The link is going to take you to our digital literacy curricula page. And in this instance specifically, we are linked to Dart. So what we shared last week, I was going to say last year. What we shared last week is some information here on the Dart curriculum. There's the alignment here with the skills. And then if we're looking at, let's say, information skills, then we have here lesson 18, searching the internet, and digital skills review, which is lesson 20. And then there's a list of like different skills from bridges. Um, we also have here the spectrum down here with if you have very beginner or low level English language learners, you could look into this red piece. This is three things that we recommend that you can do. Um, we have the experienced digital literacy, which is like that middle ground, and then proficient digital literacy. In these instances, we are looking also into English language level learner. A lot of our learners could be very fluent in technology, but then the language is what's the gap there to understand what they need to work on. So these are here just to give you a general idea of where you could get started. However, what we want to do today is go actually to the curriculum, which is right. If we click on the link, we're here in the beginning, right? We scroll past the spectrum and you have Dart curriculum and then link to the curriculum. This takes you to the this is based in Texas. They have the full curriculum in PDF, but they did this, I think it was a year, close to 2 years ago. And everything is just linked here. So you could just access the parts that you're looking for, the lessons that you're looking for, and not necessarily go through to the curriculum. I do recommend look at the curriculum at least once so you can see the strategies and all of that. And then you could just go here and look at the table of contents. So you have them grouped here. Lesson 1 to 6 is keyboard, security 7, 8, and then parts of a computer. This is where North Star implementation starts or that crossover. You don't have to. You could just focus on the Dart piece. However, if you are trying to bridge them into North Star, then this is the point where you do that transition over. And you'll keep going up to your lesson 20, which is the review. Clicking on any of these will take you to that particular section of the website. So lesson 6 right here, and then I can scroll up and down and continue. Right now, I'm going to click on the full curriculum. You have an editable version, which gives you a Word document, and that you could customize and edit and adjust it to what you have at your agency. Here's the curriculum. I want to show you here's a breakdown of the lesson structure and that kind of thing. But they do have a breakdown on characteristics for Dart instructors. I won't go in depth with it. This is page 15, but they do give you they don't have a specific requirement for this, but they do give you some sort of that background that could help you with that, with getting ready to teach the curriculum. So that's, worth mentioning if you guys are looking for someone um to teach that curriculum. Here we go. This is where we were looking for. So this is the milestones that I have mentioned. This is page 19, where you'll have that breakdown. Um, your lessons at a glance with links to all the digital resources within it. Um, I want to show you the appendices are going to be very useful in these instances. Um, your learning objectives are here. I do want to mention that each of the lessons also is aligned to the English language proficiency standards, which are also known as the ELPS standards. Um, just so that you know that again, that connection to the language is also here. Oh, this is the vocabulary instruction. Those strategies that I was mentioning, I just keep scrolling and I didn't realize the strategies on how to teach vocabulary. They break it down here for all of the lessons. So instead of your lessons having multiple pages of just how to teach it, they have one for vocabulary. There's another one. Um, they give you how will you teach it, and then they give you the vocabulary for each lesson as well. So again, this is why I recommend look at the curriculum first, just to get an idea, especially the appendices. If you want to print them out and then have those handy, and then kind of navigate the other virtual digitally, then you can. But again, these are like the vocabulary words breakdown. And there's the other one is Just one more. The keyboard practice. Again, same thing. This is lessons 1 to 6, but it'll give you that background. And then additional links and stuff like that. Page 50 is where the lesson starts. Sorry for the quick scroll. Gonna go to lesson 2. You have your objectives here. You have your standards. So your English language proficiency standard here is 8.1. Then you also have CASA's content standards, the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative. This is the bridges. This is what we saw on our webpage. And then if there's a North Star applied, you'll see it here. The North Star doesn't start really that bridging up to lesson 9, but you will see that at some point. And then you have your vocabulary, and again, these are the 5 E's. Engagement, exploration, explanation, elaboration, and evaluation. And this is the page that I was looking for. This is where I wanted to stop. So lessons 1 to 6 builds, and again, if you have questions, throw it in the chat. In the meantime, I'll continue sharing, but I will pause and prioritize the question. This is a keyboard. And one of the things that it builds heavily is building the alphabet, knowing the alphabet, and applying the keyboard practice to it. They use it as the page itself, and they practice on it. If you have an actual keyboard, it helps because then they have like they can see a real keyboard. If they're using their smartphone, they could do it that way. However, there is something that we worked on, and I'm going to share it here with you. This is not a replacement. To Dart is meant as a supplement. Mary Kay, do you remember the name of our avatar?
I think her name is Jane, if I remember correctly.
So we have a AI avatar here. We worked on this a while back. We had an actual person from YouTube that was doing them, but they didn't have them all, so we had to be creative. But the point here, lessons 1 to 6 requires that practice. So if you're working with your learners and there's multiple groups, or you might need some time to work with a group while the others work on, they say that page keyboard or like the actual keyboard. This is another option that you have, which will be a digital keyboard that will ties in both the language and the digital piece of it. I'll click on lowercase alphabet. You're going to see here on the right, and you're more than welcome to click it on your end. On the right, there's your activities. These were recommend what's on the actual lessons that is on the curriculum. But if you click on keyboard layout, you'll have here, if you're working solo, so it says click on any letter on the screen, write the uppercase or lowercase letter on a piece of paper, play the video and practice the pronunciation of the letter, and repeat 1 to 3 until all letters are covered. So I click on close. And if I click on T, for example, I'll have how lowercase t looks, how uppercase t looks, and then the sound. So Jane, which you're not going to be able to hear because I didn't add audio. Give me 1 second. Jane is going to go in and pronounce T.
T, 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 T.
So you could click around if it's on any of these letters, and you have Jane here for that short video. We have W, S, all the letters that you would like to learn are here. If you wanted to do this as a group activity, we're going to go back here, click on group. Very similar, but learner one reads aloud a random letter, and then learner two needs to click on it on their keyboard. And then they both will practice the writing and then on the piece of paper. And then they play the video to listen to it, and then they repeat it. If there's more than two, then they all take turns and they'll get to practice. Again, we were talking about practice earlier, so this gives them a way for them to practice the words, try to listen to it, which one is the word, tying the listening to the letter and that kind of thing. It goes also with numbers and special keys. So we have the numbers here, and we have Jane also doing those for us. And then when we go into symbols, symbol has a different layout here, but then you will also be able to see the different symbols and pronunciation for these.
Shift, shift.
Okay, I'm going to pause here. If there's any questions, anything specific you guys would like to look at. In the meantime, there is a question that I will take now. The state requires us to document usage hours. With North Star, this information is easy to track and verify. However, with Dart, there doesn't seem to be a clear way to record usage other than describing the activities completed. Yes. So with Dart, because it's based on teaching I don't want to say paper base, but because it's trying to teach the concepts before using the technology, there is no tracker with the work that's there. So what we have recommended with some of the agencies that have reached out with the question is that if they're signing time or they're having a computer lab time or they're working on if they're doing stations, right, and they're working on a specific amount of time, then that's what you're using to track. And that would, if it's part of the attendance and your students worked with X activity, then that's the amount of time that if you're assigning a time. If you have a specific task that you're working on, then you would estimate how much that time would be, and then that would translate into, if they completed it, then that's the amount of time that's happening. With North Star or other programs, sometimes the amount of time gets very large. You always have those overachievers that do like 100 hours. I've seen students with over 200 hours recorded. And sometimes entering 200 hours then kind of skews a little bit the depends on how you put it in, of course. But then it might skew the data because you didn't do 200 hours of instruction. That student spent that extra time to kind of polish their skills. So if you kind of cap it more or less as a specific amount, um, that that gives that gives out. There's other ways that we could explore that if it's something that you're interested in looking for ways to do, feel free to reach out and we go a little bit more specific as to what would be a strategy that could apply.
See, I've been having a hard time with that. So, in trying to do the keyboard, and I didn't know that this lesson that you just showed us because I looked through Dart and I did not see that. So I made sure I save this.
So
Um,
this
I've
is
been
not,
doing
oh, go ahead.
typing.com as a way of having that recorded time frame because like again when you're trying to make sure that the state sees that you're doing this and that, and I mean with Burlington you have it, with North Star you have it, and this one kind of leaves us on a, we're trying to make sure that we're keeping our funding going when it comes to tech. So
Okay.
um that's why like this one is like, but this little box that you have here that you just showed us is great. But again, would Dart, would it be, because I've been connecting it, but I don't know if it's really something that goes hand in hand. It's doing Dart and typing.com. Would that, do you think that goes hand in hand? I mean, I've been getting it to work, but I'm not sure if it's like the right procedure.
So, I mean, this is going to vary by agency. Typing.com definitely works because you're practicing, in addition to that, you're practicing like finger placement and you're typing just to kind of get some speed. So if you're working with learners that are eventually taking the GD test, that's going to be a skill that's going to help them when they're typing. Because if they type, we know when they come in to register and they start typing, they type very slow, they have a limited amount of time for them to express what they want to express in their essays. So typing.com is excellent. This goes a little before that. You're getting familiar with the keyboard. You This is going into like knowing the pronunciation of word of the letters and that kind of thing. This in particular is not, you won't find this in the Dart curriculum. This is something that we worked on to give you like a interactive approach using technology um to practice and then also kind of, practicing your listening and that kind of thing. But typing.com, I think there's another one. I don't remember the name of the other one, but it's also they're great programs to build on the keyboard practice. We also have one for the mouse.
I think it's called mousing around. I've done that. I think I've
Mousing
got
around.
it here. Yeah.
Oh, that's another one then. Um,
I do that with them. That's like our we get a little bit of an intro to Dart and then we do that so that they can learn to maneuver, and then we'll do a little bit more Dart and then I'll start getting them to do little segments in typing.com to kind of try to connect everything.
okay. No, but I mean that works. There's no the curriculum is open for it integrates. If there's something that I have to say with Dart, right? It slows it down. What if you're using North Star? It's going at a pace that might be too fast for your learners, and you need something slower that takes the time to really build that skill and to understand the skill that they're learning. Dart provides that, slows it down so they could actually go through it, understand it, and then once they build that, then you could move into North Star. A lot of the, because of that 211 score as well, that's the other piece. But if it's working for you and having that practice, um works. Even in typing.com, they'll have to click around and all that. So they also practice on the mouse, but they get that separate practice on the side too. So um this is the one that we shared. In this case, if it's like moving the mouse, just click around and just try to catch them. Um, the double clicking, which is always an issue for many learners. If you click too slow, nothing happens. You have to double click faster so it moves. And then the other one is, well, there's drag and drop, and then there's text selection. So here, we're number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 having. I need to know how to use the highlight option. And then I check and it's correct. So move to the next one. I'm number 7. So Mary's waiting in the lunchroom for you. If I highlight in, which is not number 7, I click check, nothing happens. I'll have to actually highlight 7. And again, these are just practice for them.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
And that's my device. It can't help me with that. Um, yeah, so these are some ways that you can also build like on skills, but there's no specific resource that you have to use for this, is what I was trying to say. We use trackpads. The students don't have access to a mouse in class. Can these be used with a trackpad? Definitely, yes. So both both this one and this one you can. This one we didn't create. It's just a website that we found. Um, Drag and drop, then in that case, would be useful because that requires 2 fingers to do. It is not easy on a trackpad, right? So this kind of the click and move. Some of them have this 30 is to use one finger and drag, and then they end up dropping. But then, depending on the mouse pad, it's like what options are available. So then this is a good way to kind of understand the concept of the dragging and drop, how it works with that. Um, as well as the left click. So if they're right clicking, I mean, this is left, I'm sorry, right click. If they're right clicking, I'm left clicking right now, nothing happens. Exactly. Highlighting isn't easy. So sometimes you need the practice, We don't want to teach in isolation. However, there are some instances that you need to just get that practice going. So in this case, I just highlight and then check. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And you don't need to practice, do 30 minutes. That's too long. Maybe 5, 10 minutes. And they'll practice a couple. And then they'll move to the next station. If they're doing this start keyboard, then they'll work on the keyboard a little bit. And then if they're going into Burlington English, let's say, or they're going to Aztec or GD.com or whatever programs that you have available, then again, that just gives them that different context for them to practice in. Some agencies do provide um, mice in the class, but sometimes then those disappear because then they're stragglers, you know. So again, you kind of weigh the options. Trackpads are fine, and then again, it's that practice. It might take a little more time as they practice, but um, that works. Any additional questions? Okay, as we round up, oh, the numbers are not here. This is the guide of like what is our keyboard practice slides that we just shared. This will be also on the slides, and when they go out, you'll get them as well. And with that, I want to share this with you. So we have that tech implementation and support, right? When you click on this, I'll show you here quickly. You would get three options here. We have Learning Stream and Canvas. So those that need help with registering for a session or something didn't work out or you're doing it on demand, we have this one down here. We have the digital literacy curriculum implementation and support, which is what we're talking about right now. And then we have like everything else, digital tools. So if you're using Microsoft, Google, or any other tool that you need support, um, you could click on these. If it happens you click on the wrong one, you schedule something, totally fine. It's still the same people, Mary Kate and I. So we'll be able to support you, whichever one you click. It just gives us an idea of what hat are we wearing for that day. But you could click on it and then you'll get a list of different times available based on what we have on our schedule. And then you could click whatever time, you get 30 minutes of anything that you could ask, any way that we can support, and we'll, work with you with any of those questions. I lost here it is. And then our link to a website where we have everything else going on. But thank you very much for joining in today. We have our contact information here on any instructional coaching that you're looking for, either A to the N or digital A to the N. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.